There is something very strange about reality, something so obvious yet so unsettling, that once you truly think about it, you may never see the world the same way again. Look around you for a moment. You see colors, shapes, objects that feel solid and real. This is green, this is red, and this is blue. But here's the question no one can answer. How do you know that what you see as blue is the same blue that I see? We've given colors names, labels to communicate, but those names don't guarantee the experience behind them is the same. What if your blue is actually my red, and we've just spent our entire lives agreeing on the same words while experiencing completely different realities?
There is no way to prove it. No way to step into someone else's mind and see what they see. And that's where things begin to get uncomfortable. In 2015, the internet broke over a single image, a dress. Some people swore it was white and gold. Others argued it was blue and black. Friends argued. Families debated. Strangers fought online. Not because they were stubborn, but because they were genuinely seeing different things. The same image, the same light, the same moment, yet completely different realities. And it didn't stop there. There was the Yanni versus Laurel audio clip. Two completely different words heard from the same sound. So what does that mean? It means something deeply unsettling. Your senses are not objective. They don't show you the world as it is.
They show you the world as your brain interprets it, which leads to a terrifying possibility. What if everything you experience is just a version of reality constructed inside your mind? Think about it. There could be someone out there right now who sees human teeth as purple, but calls them white because that's what they were taught, and they would never know the difference, just like you wouldn't. For all the progress humanity has made, for all the technology, science, and discoveries, we still don't fully understand something as basic as how we perceive reality. And that's just the beginning. Because beyond our senses, beyond what we think we know, there is something much bigger, something deeper, something that covers 71% of our planet, and yet we've barely even touched it.
71% of the Earth is covered by water. Let that sink in. More than half of our planet is not land, not cities, not places we've built, but ocean. Now here's the part that sounds almost unbelievable. We have only explored about 5 to 10% of it. That means over 90% of the ocean is still unknown. Think about that for a moment. We have satellites orbiting distant planets. We've sent probes beyond our solar system. We can look billions of light years into space, but right here, on our own planet, there are entire worlds we've never seen. And what we have discovered is already strange enough.
There are fish with transparent heads, creatures that glow in complete darkness, organisms that survive under crushing pressure, in freezing temperatures, with no sunlight at all. The deeper you go, the more reality starts to feel unreal. Imagine descending into the ocean. At first, there is light, movement, life you recognize. But as you go deeper, the sunlight fades, colors disappear. Everything becomes darker, colder, quieter, until eventually there is nothing but darkness. And in that darkness, there are things we can barely comprehend.
Creatures that don't look like they belong on Earth. Bodies shaped by conditions we don't fully understand. behaviors we can't explain. And here's the truth. Some of the strangest creatures we've ever seen, like the blobfish or the barrel-eye fish, they come from the small percentage of the ocean we've already explored. Which raises a chilling question. If that's what we've already found, what's still waiting in the dark? At the very bottom of the ocean, we simply don't know what exists. Not completely, not even close. And yet, we walk around every day as if we understand the world, as if we figured it all out. But the truth is, we're standing on a planet where most of it remains a mystery. And even on the parts we do understand, things aren't as clear as they seem.
Take something simple, like a coastline. A coastline is just where land meets the sea. Sounds simple, right? So here's a question. How long is a coastline? For example, how long is the coastline of the United States? You'd think there would be one clear answer, but there isn't. There are many answers, all different, all correct. Because coastlines are not straight lines.
They twist, curve, break into bays, split into tiny edges. And the more detail you measure, the longer the coastline becomes. Measure it roughly, you get one number. Measure every tiny curve, you get a completely different one. So what's the real answer? Again, we don't know. Even something as basic as measuring the edge of land becomes uncertain when you look closely enough. And this reveals something deeper. The world isn't as clean, as simple, or as defined as we like to believe.
But here's where things get even more interesting. Because when humans don't understand something, we create, we invent, we adapt. We made clothes to survive the cold, shelter to protect ourselves, tools to hunt, money to trade. We've built an entire civilization on top of not knowing and trying to figure things out. But that raises another question. Some of the most important things in human history, were they really invented, or were they simply discovered?
Take fire. Did we invent fire? Or did we just learn how to use something that already existed? And what about music? Think about music for a second. It's everywhere, in movies, in memories, in moments that define our lives. A single melody can make you feel something you can't even explain. But here's the question. Did humans actually invent music? Or did we just discover it? Because sound existed long before us. Birds sing, whales sing, even frogs create rhythmic, almost musical tones.
Nature has always had sound, patterns, frequencies, harmony. So when humans created music, did we invent something new? Or did we simply recognize that certain sounds feel good together? And if that's the case, what even is music? Is it structure, emotion, or just organized sound? We may never fully know. Now, let's talk about something we've always believed made us human: tools. For a long time, scientists were convinced that humans were unique because we use tools. We create them, we improve them, we build entire civilizations with them. It was seen as the defining line between us and everything else. Until one observation changed everything. In the 1960s, Jane Goodall was studying chimpanzees in Africa. What she found shocked the scientific world.
Chimpanzees were using tools. Not randomly, not by accident, but with intention. They used sticks to gather food, modified objects to solve problems. Suddenly, the line between human and animal was no longer clear. They felt, they showed emotions, they hugged each other, they experienced loss, and they mourned. So now the question became even harder.
Seriously, if animals can use tools, feel emotions, build relationships, then what exactly makes us human? For a long time, we believed the answer was self-awareness, the ability to recognize ourselves, to know that we exist. But even that didn't hold. In 2012, a group of scientists created something called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, and its conclusion was simple, but deeply unsettling. Humans are not unique in having consciousness. Many animals, including mammals and birds, also possess the neurological structures needed to experience awareness, which means they don't just react, they experience, they feel, they exist in their own way. So now we're left with a question that no one has been able to answer. If tools, if emotions, if consciousness do not define us, then what does?
We don't know. All we know is this. At some point, we weren't here. Now, we are. And one day, we won't be. We don't know what came before us, and we don't know what happens after. When someone dies and comes back, we call it a near-death experience because we assume death is the end. But what if it isn't? What if everything we believe about life and death is incomplete? And it's not just life that we don't understand. Even the world around us is full of mysteries.
Massive stone structures, like Stonehenge, still leave us asking, who built them and why? The same goes for the pyramids of ancient Egypt. Were they built purely by humans? Was there something more? We have theories, we have evidence, but absolute certainty? Not really. And maybe that's the most honest thing we can say about reality. We don't know as much as we think we do. But here's where things take a turn, because everything we've talked about so far, the questions, the discoveries, the mysteries, they all come from one place, the human mind.
Everything we've ever built, every idea, every invention, every theory about the universe, all of it started in one place, the human mind. Before anything exists in the real world, it exists here first, as a thought, as an idea, as something invisible. But here's the question. Do we really understand how powerful the mind is? Because the truth is, we don't, not even close. There's something called the placebo effect, and at first glance, it sounds simple. A doctor gives a patient a treatment, but the treatment is fake. No real medicine, no active ingredient. And yet, the patient starts to get better. Why? Because the brain believes the treatment is real, and that belief triggers actual physical changes in the body. Pain decreases, symptoms improve, healing begins. Let that sink in. The body heals because the mind thinks it should. No real drug, no real treatment, just belief. Which leads to a powerful idea. What if your mind is far more in control of your reality than you realize?
And it doesn't stop there. In studies on human behavior, scientists found that something as simple as talking positively to yourself can actually change how you feel. When you tell yourself, "I can do this, I'm capable, I'm improving," your brain begins to respond. Your confidence increases, your stress decreases, your performance improves. Not because something external changed, but because your internal dialogue did. So now we have to ask, If your thoughts can influence your body, your emotions, your actions, then where does the mind end and reality begin?
Because maybe they're not as separate as we think. And here's the part that makes it even more fascinating. Everything we've just talked about, the placebo effect, self-belief, mental influence, these are just the things we know. Now imagine everything we don't. There could be entire abilities of the mind that we haven't even discovered yet. Ways of thinking, perceiving, or influencing reality that are completely beyond our current understanding. And yet, we go through life every day, assuming we understand ourselves. But do we really? Because even the simplest things about human behavior are still full of mystery.
Why do we yawn when we see someone else yawn? Why is laughter contagious? Why do we cry, not just when we're sad, but also when we're overwhelmed with happiness? Think about that. Crying is supposed to help regulate the body. It calms the nervous system. It brings you back to balance. So why do we associate it with pain? Why does something that helps us feel so heavy? And laughter was once believed to be purely social, a way to bond, to signal safety. But then we discovered something unexpected. Animals laugh too. Seriously, dolphins, rats, even creatures we never thought of as emotional show signs of joy. So now the question becomes, are emotions uniquely human? Or are they just part of life itself? And what about something as simple as being right-handed or left-handed? Why isn't everyone the same? Why aren't we all ambidextrous? Wouldn't that make more sense? We have theories, explanations, scientific guesses. But in the end, that's all they are, theories. Because proving something as absolute truth is much harder than we think.
And history has shown us that again and again. There was a time when humans believed the Earth was the center of the universe, and it made perfect sense. Until one day, it didn't. Which raises a dangerous possibility. What if some of the things we believe today are also wrong? What if much of what we know is just temporary understanding? And if that's true, then how much of reality are we actually missing?
The universe and how small we really are. There is something about space that changes the way you think. Not because it's beautiful, not because it's mysterious, but because it makes you realize something uncomfortable. You are incredibly small. Going to space is one of humanity's greatest achievements. We've built machines that leave Earth, travel through the void, and send information back across millions of kilometers. But instead of making us feel powerful, space did the opposite. It showed us how little we actually are. Right now, scientists have discovered at least 2,500 other solar systems, and that number could be in the tens of billions. And that's just in our galaxy, Milky Way. Our galaxy alone contains hundreds of billions of stars, and the Milky Way is just one galaxy among billions of others. Try to imagine that.
Billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars?
many with their own planets, which leads to a question that humans have been asking for centuries. Are we alone? And if we're not, then where is everyone? Because statistically, it feels almost impossible that we are the only life in the universe. And yet, we haven't heard anything. No signal, no message, no clear proof, just silence. We have ideas, theories, possibilities. Maybe intelligent life is rare. Maybe civilizations don't last long. Maybe they exist, but are too far away. Or maybe they're looking at us right now, asking the exact same question.
But just like everything else, we don't know. And the deeper we look into the universe, the more questions we find. What is the universe made of? Why does anything exist at all? Why are there atoms? Where did they come from? Everything you see, everything you touch, even your own body is made of atoms. But ask one simple question: why do atoms exist? And suddenly, science becomes quiet. Because science is very good at explaining how things work, but not always why they exist.
And then there's something even stranger. Something we experience every second, but barely understand. Time. You've been watching this video for several minutes now. Seconds passing one after another without stopping. Yesterday is gone. Today is happening. Tomorrow hasn't arrived. That feels obvious, natural. But what is time really? Where does it come from? Did humans discover time? Or did we invent it as a way to measure change?
Because without clocks, without calendars, would time even feel the same? Or would it just be an endless flow with no clear beginning or end? The truth is, we don't fully understand time. And when you start questioning time, reality itself begins to feel unstable, because everything we rely on, every memory, every plan, every moment, depends on something we can't fully explain.
And that brings us back to something simple, but deeply unsettling. There are so many things in this world that we just don't know. Some are big questions, some are small. Like this: why is yawning contagious? Why do we laugh? Why do we cry? These seem trivial, but the deeper you look, the less clear the answers become. Because reality isn't as simple as it appears. And maybe that's the most important realization of all.
There's a famous idea. You've probably heard it before. I think, therefore I am. It was proposed by René Descartes, a philosopher who questioned everything. Not just the big questions, but everything. He doubted his senses. He doubted reality. He even doubted his own existence. Because think about it. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? You've had dreams before. Dreams that felt real, that looked real, that felt just like this moment. And yet, you woke up. So what makes this moment different? What proves that this isn't just another dream? Descartes pushed this idea even further.
He imagined something terrifying. What if there is some powerful intelligence manipulating your thoughts, feeding you everything you see, everything you hear, everything you feel? A complete illusion. It sounds like science fiction, like The Matrix.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no way to fully disprove it. You cannot step outside your own mind to verify reality. Everything you experience comes through your senses,
And we already know your senses can be wrong. So Descartes came to one conclusion. Even if everything is fake, even if reality is an illusion, the fact that you are thinking means something is happening. And if something is happening, there must be something. That something is you, or at least something experiencing this moment.
But even that idea was challenged. Later philosophers argued, just because there are thoughts doesn't necessarily mean there is a fixed self behind them. Maybe there is no stable you. Maybe there is just experience, thoughts happening without a clear owner. And suddenly, even the idea of I becomes uncertain. So now we're left with a reality that is unstable. You can't fully trust your senses. You can't fully prove reality. You can't even fully define yourself.
And yet, you're here, experiencing this moment, feeling, thinking, existing in some form. At this point, you might be thinking, this is getting too abstract, too philosophical. But here's the thing. This isn't just philosophy. It affects everything. Because even the physical world isn't as stable as we think. The ground beneath your feet feels solid, but in reality, it's constantly moving. Earth's surface is made of massive plates, slowly shifting over time, creating earthquakes, mountains, entire continents changing shape. So even something as solid as the Earth isn't truly stable.
And if that's true, then what can we actually be certain of? Science tries to give us answers, and it does incredibly well. But even science is not absolute. When scientists discovered the Higgs boson at CERN, they celebrated a breakthrough. But even then, there was still a tiny chance they were wrong. Because science doesn't deal in certainty, only probability. Something can be 99.9999% true and still not be absolute.
Hopefully, there was even a moment when scientists believed particles had moved faster than light, a result that should have been impossible. The data looked correct, the confidence level was extremely high, and yet it turned out to be an error. So even at the highest level of knowledge, mistakes happen, which leads to a powerful realization. We don't know everything. In fact, there is a very real chance that much of what we believe today will one day be proven wrong. And strangely, that's not a bad thing, because not knowing is what drives us forward. Every discovery, every question, every step humanity has ever taken started with one simple idea. We don't understand this yet. And maybe
that's the point. Maybe existence isn't about having all the answers. Maybe it's about asking better questions. Because at the end of everything, after all the science, all the philosophy, all the exploration, there is still one question that remains unanswered. What does it mean to exist? And maybe the most honest answer is, we don't know, but we're trying. And maybe that's enough.